They say the road to Blackthorn Hill is older than memory itself. It's just a winding strip of cracked asphalt, cutting through the forest like an old scar. Travelers don't come this way much anymore. Most avoid it, whispering about the house that waits at the summit. For nearly a century, that house has been abandoned, ... or so the stories go. Its windows are like dark empty sockets, its walls sag with rot, and the forest has grown wild all around it, swallowing the garden and choking the once-proud iron gate. But even in its ruin, the house is alive and whispers. People who venture too close claim to hear voices. Some swear they've seen pale faces peering from the upstairs windows. Others insist they hear laughter at night, a sound as thin and brittle as glass breaking in the wind. My name is Eleanor Cross, and I've never believed in ghost stories. I'm 26, practical, and stubbornly grounded in reality. I came to Blackthorn Hill not because of superstition, but out of necessity. My grandmother died 3 months ago, leaving me as her only heir. Among the few things she left behind, some worn photographs, yellowed letters, a string of pearls, was a deed, the deed to Blackthorn House. She had never spoken of it. I didn't even know our family owned such a place. But the lawyer's words were crystal clear. The house belonged to me now. My first thought was to sell it, sight unseen. But curiosity, that relentless little spark, urged me to see it, just once, before I made a decision. So, one gray October morning, with leaves scattering across the road like pages from a burned book, I drove out to Blackthorn Hill. The house revealed itself slowly, emerging from between the trees like some great beast rising from tall grass. The air grew colder as I drove up the hill, my breath misting inside the car. When I finally pulled up to the gate, I just stopped and stared. The iron arch still bore the name Blackthorn in rusting letters, but the gate itself hung crooked, its hinges twisted as if by some terrible force. The gravel path beyond was choked with weeds, and at the end of it stood the house. It was enormous, even in its decay. 3 stories tall, with gables that clawed at the sky and windows as dark as shut eyes. The porch sagged under the weight of years, and the shutters dangled by single nails. Ivy crept up the walls like veins on rotting flesh. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. It's only a house, I told myself, just wood and stone. I parked the car and stepped into the chill. The silence was the first thing I noticed. Not a normal silence, but a kind of smothered hush. No birds sang, no insects hummed. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. As I walked up the path, my boots crunching on the gravel, the house seemed to lean closer, as if it were listening to me. The front door was locked, of course, but the key the lawyer had given me turned easily in the ancient brass knob. The hinges groaned as the door swung open, the sound echoing through the hollow interior. Dust billowed out, thick and choking, carrying a smell of mold and something sharper, something like iron, or old blood. I wrinkled my nose and stepped inside. The hall was vast. A grand staircase rose before me like the spine of some sleeping giant. Portraits lined the walls, their subjects faded and grim, their eyes glinting faintly in the dim light. Furniture, draped in white sheets, loomed around me like shrouded corpses. High above, a chandelier hung, its crystals dulled with a thick layer of grime. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear a slow, rhythmic dripping plink plink planks. My footsteps echoed as I moved from room to room. The parlor was a tomb of dust and cobwebs. The dining room still had a long oak table, its surface scarred and gouged, chairs scattered around it as if a meal had ended in sudden chaos. In the kitchen, rusted pots still hung on their hooks, and the air was thick with the faint smell of rot. I found the back door bolted shut, the windows nailed closed from the inside. Whoever had left this place wanted it sealed for good. I made my way to the second floor. The bedrooms were even stranger. One room was lined with dolls, their porcelain faces cracked, their eyes cloudy with age, all of them staring at the door. Another was filled with mirrors, but every single one was draped in cloth, as though someone had tried to smother their reflections. The master bedroom held a huge 4-poster bed, its canopy moth-eaten and sagging. On the nightstand lay a Bible, its cover torn, its pages warped by water damage. The moment I touched it, the spine snapped in my hands, as brittle as old bone. By the time I reached the 3rd floor, dusk had begun to bleed into the sky. The attic door stood at the far end of the hall, shut tight with a heavy, rusting padlock. I pulled on it, but it didn't budge. I made a mental note to come back with bolt cutters. For now, I headed back downstairs, feeling uneasy but still determined. I decided I would stay the night. Just one night, to get a real feel for what I was dealing with. It was, after all, my inheritance. I set up my sleeping bag in the parlor, lit a lantern I'd brought with me, and ate a sandwich in the growing silence. The house creaked and settled around me, the typical noises of an old structure, and I tried my best to ignore them. By 10 o'clock, I was lying on my back, just staring up at the cracked ceiling, listening to that incessant drip, drip, drip. And then I heard it. A door slammed shut somewhere above me. I sat bolt upright. My heart hammered against my ribs. The air suddenly felt heavier, colder. I told myself it was just the wind, but I knew all the windows were shut. Slowly, I stood, grabbing my lantern, and followed the sound. The staircase groaned under my weight as I climbed back up. The second floor was a long tunnel of deep shadows. I moved past the doll room, past the mirror room, toward the end of the hall, and then I heard it again, a whisper. It was faint, like someone speaking from the other side of a wall. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The whisper grew louder. I couldn't make out the words, but it was definitely a voice. A man's voice, low and urgent, and it was coming from the attic. The padlocked door shuddered, as though something was pressing against it from the other side. My lantern flickered violently, my skin crawled. I took a stumbling step back, and just like that, the whisper stopped. The silence crashed down again, heavier and more complete than before. I turned and fled down the stairs, my pulse pounding in my ears. Back in the parlor, I forced myself to breathe, to think rationally. It's an old house. Houses make strange noises. It's nothing. But deep down, I knew better. I knew that wasn't just the house settling. That night, I dreamed. I dreamed I was sitting at that long dining table, which was now set with rotting food. Shadowy figures sat around it, their faces blurred, their hands clawing at their plates. At the head of the table was a man in a black suit, his face completely hidden in shadow. He turned to me and whispered something I couldn't hear. When I tried to answer him, blood poured from my mouth. I woke with a scream, gasping for air, the lantern long since extinguished. The house was dark, utterly suffocatingly dark. And somewhere above me, the whisper began again. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Blackthorn House. If you're as curious as I am to find out what's behind that attic door, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the shadows.